Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who Series 13 First Thoughts. Today we'll be looking at Chapter 4 of the Flux story, Village of the Angels, written by Chris Chibnall and co-written by Maxine Alderton. Last week, while we were starting to get some answers to what's going on, brand new questions were raised. We got to learn more about Vinder and his partner Belle, and we got a brief but very much welcome reappearance of Jo Martin as the fugitive Doctor. Before we get into the review though, as always, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can stay up to date with all the content this channel releases. If you enjoy the video, give it a like, comment your thoughts on the episode below, and you can follow me on Twitter at the link here. With the TARDIS under the control of a weeping angel, the Doctor, Yaz and Dan arrive in a isolated village in the 1960s, where Yaz and Dan join a investigation into the disappearance of a young child, while the Doctor finds Claire from episode 1 working with a Professor Jericho to try and understand her psychic premonitions. But it's not long before the village is overrun by angels and the residents began to be picked off one by one, as the angels seem to be hunting someone. Much like War of the Sontarans, this story kind of takes a more relaxed approach to the overarching story, as it's entirely possible that this particular concept was written before the introduction of the serialized story. However, I would say surprisingly, this story manages to connect to the overarching plot much better than the War of the Sontarans and feels much more like a part of the story than just something that could easily be a standalone adventure. That's mainly down to the fact that the Angels plot directly relates to the Division. We do get some additional scenes with Belle, Vinder and Azure spread out across the episode, but the actual main Angel plot does tie in pretty well. I think the main reason people were assuming this was going to be the most standalone was the fact that it's the only story co-written by another person other than Chris Chibnall. Maxine Alderton is best known for writing what I would consider to be Jodie's best story, Haunting the Villa Diodati from Series 12, so it made sense to bring her back, even in a sort of co-writing capacity. And once again, she does a pretty good job here. I think it's a fairly similar setup of having a previously established monster take control of an isolated location and have a fairly gothic tone, but I think this is a very different story, and it's good to know that she wasn't a one-hit wonder, and I hope we see more of her in Russell's era, and I hope that he doesn't just do away with some of the writers of the Chibnall era, as we've had some pretty good ones. While I do think War of the Sontarans was a stronger chapter of Flux in terms of characterization and story, however, this is definitely the second strongest of the season and is easily the best Blink sequel. Blink is probably always going to be the strongest Weeping Angels story, but I think this does a pretty good job at not introducing brand new gimmicks for them like a lot of the Moffat era Angels stories did, but instead making effective use of what we already know about them. Particularly concepts like the image of an angel is used quite effectively here, and there are some, well, I wouldn't say scary moments, it's definitely a very tense story. It's got some interesting stuff when it comes to characterizing the Weeping Angels, as it's not an easy job to try and give them personalities when they're essentially just props that don't have an opportunity to emote in any capacity. And it's interesting to see an angel that is potentially having certain morals, as the main focus of the Angels' plan is to capture a rogue member of their group who was a member of the Division. Yes, it turns out that the Weeping Angels were tools of the Division, which is how this story ties in the most to the arc that's going on here. I'd say for the most part this was Maxine's story, and Chibnall was the one who altered it to suit the overarching story. The Bell scenes are definitely the most obvious Chibnall additions. There's not really too much to say about the characters in this one because it's a very, very fast-paced, tense story, and the focus of the episode is mostly trying to survive the Angels and work out what's going on. However, what I will say on our main cast, an interesting addition for the Doctor is the fact that she is given an opportunity to get quick answers to her missing past, and she ultimately decides not to take it. Across this season, the Doctor has been showing signs of vulnerability when it comes to her lost past in the Division, and how she seems to be making mistakes and taking risks that she otherwise wouldn't have. And it's good to know that in certain cases she is prepared to put her guard up and not easily fall for tricks just for the sake of trying to find out who she was. So that was a nice bit of growth to show that the Doctor is still capable of thinking logically and not giving in to the rogue Angel's demands. Yaz and Dan spend most of the story together and so work as a duo, so don't really have separate moments for characterization. However, the standout of the three definitely is Yaz this time around. When she takes part in the search for the missing child, we get to finally see her skills as a police officer in action. It's so refreshing, and whenever she is faced with the Weeping Angels, Mandip Gill does a great job presenting the fear purely in her physicality rather than expressing or saying out loud that she's scared. She does a fantastic job here. John Bishop is also great, though isn't given that much to do, which is a shame. The main two characters which get focus here are Professor Jericho and Claire. I'd say Kevin McNulty does a pretty good job with the Professor, and it's refreshing that they don't go the route of having his obsession with his study get in the way of the situation and cause him to make stupid choices that put everyone at risk. When he is forced to protect the Doctor and Claire while they're out of action and keep an eye on the Angels, he is able to do that and remain brave and have a decent understanding of self-preservation, heroism. Claire herself is also really interesting, and where the main plot comes to a head, where it's revealed that the Angel on the run is hiding within inside her and wants to exchange Claire for the Doctor. I know a lot of people were kind of hoping that Annabelle Sholey, who plays Claire, would ultimately be revealed to be a secret Doctor or potentially the next Doctor. However, I knew that was never going to be the case. I do say she would have been a good choice, as if you've seen my top choices I'd like to see for the next Doctor, she kind of fits with the kind of actor I'm looking for if I were to cast the Doctor, but given how far this was shot back in 2021 or 2020, we knew it was not going to be the case, as they've only started auditioning the 14th Doctor a couple of months ago, so it was never going to happen. The decision to have the reasons she knew the Doctor in the first episode be that she's psychic is a bit of a played out trope, but this is a better example of that being done compared to something like Planet of the Dead, where the psychic character plays no part in the story and only exists to set up the Four Knox plot. So I definitely say it's a better example of that trope here. This story definitely has the most traditional cliffhanger compared to the previous three stories, where their main focus, i.e. rescuing Dan, defeating the Sontarans, repairing the temple, All of that stuff gets resolved in each episode, and the cliffhanger is the result of an external force. Here, however, the story itself doesn't feel the need to resolve the plot, as the Doctor doesn't end up saving the day, as she is taken in the place of the rogue Division Angel, as she is seen as a far more valuable target. So while it's likely that the village will no longer be under the control of the Angels, it doesn't mean that all is well, as Yaz and Dan are stuck in the past without access to the TARDIS, and now the Doctor is the prisoner of the Division. So overall, a very strong story and a welcome return to the horror roots of the Weeping Angels. Claire and Professor Jericho are the standout characters in this episode, and while they didn't get much in terms of characterization, the Doctor, Yaz and Dan continue to be a great dynamic, and I'm interested to see where we go next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for Survivors of the Flux.